First girl I ever dated with any seriousness. She'd broken it off with her ex, Carl, a few days before we started dating.
We
I
are
would later find out I
live.
was number 3 in a steady string of rebounds. This girl couldn't survive without being attached to someone like a parasite. One day a few weeks into our being together, I noticed she's a little preoccupied looking at one of the rings she's wearing. So just to strike up some conversation, I ask her about it. She shoots me an accusatory look to start, as if I wasn't supposed to notice her blatant disregard for everything else going on around her. Finally, she held the hand with the ring up to my face so I could get a good look at it, and said, "Don't ever wear this ring. Promise me." I asked why not, as she explained. She took off the ring and placed it in my hand so I could spend more time looking at it, and, presumably, understand the weight of the situation. Because Carl gave this ring his personal blessing, and he was a person of tremendous darkness, I thought it meant he loved me. But last night the Archangel Gabriel came to me in a vision to warn me that if you ever wear this ring, you'll die. I put on an incredibly serious expression, held the ring up between index finger and thumb, then murmured, "You mean like this," while slipping it on my finger. A few days later, she was latched onto someone else.
Wait, Mel, are you getting
He had a
Terracosta?
temper tantrum and bit me. The argument was about how I felt he was too selfish and immature to have kids.
The water type, the fossil
She slept
Pokemon.
with another guy because I changed my shirt
Same
in
thing.
front of a mixed group of girls and guys.
You got Terratuga?
UW. Which
Okay.
ex? 1. Attempted to elicit sympathy from me when she cheated on me with her boss, because he did her in the butt. 4. Slit her wrists when I broke up with her, while I was there. Downed a bottle of pills when I broke up with her after reneging on the first breakup so that she wouldn't kill herself. I forced my hand down her throat to save her. Faked a pregnancy to get me to stay with her. When I freaked out that she was pregnant,
I took her
she
to Night
became
Princess
enraged
and
and said we should break up. When I agreed, she then locked herself in the bathroom with a knife. Called her mother asking what to do. Her mother didn't believe me when I told her what was happening. I checked her into a mental hospital after I got her out of the bathroom. Her mom then believed me. 5. When I was robbed at gunpoint, she got pee at me for being where I was, on the street my brother lived on. She stayed pee off at me for days. 6. She freaked out after meeting my twin brother because of how happy my brother and I were when we hung out. She then said she didn't even know me anymore. This quickly escalated into a breakup scenario. She had bipolar disorder. 7. Broke into the locked bathroom with my phone in her hand, furious that an ex-GF had texted me Merry Christmas. Said I had to move out that night if I didn't swear to never speak with an ex-GF ever again. This was part of a pattern of her checking my phone and computer whenever I wasn't looking. That escalated quickly. When I was at work, she called me up enraged that she'd found a chat session on my computer where I told my brother about her going apeshit on me about the ex-GF situation. When I came home, she'd thrown all of my belongings into the foyer of the house and said she was going to set them on fire. She then told me we're finished. When I said okay and started packing my things, she flipped out and started punching me over and over again. But the thing that really got to me is when she spit up the omelette I'd made right in front of me because it was disgusting. Everybody loves my omelets. She was just a crazy bee. Everybody loves my omelets. She was just a crazy bee. Awesome. 1. Tried to obtain a 50% share of my house, my mortgage, my bills etc, and she thought she could have half because we had been dating and she had lived here despite paying nothing. 2. Then accused me of domestic violence to my parents and the police. 3. Tried to blackmail me to pay her £10,000 to make her go away. 4. Sent anonymous letters to my government workplace alleging that I was taking drugs and stealing equipment from work. 5. Reported me to the police for smashing up her car after she fricked it up. I was on a 3-day IT course for work 250 miles away at the time. Thank goodness. Yep, dodge a bullet with that one. I don't think dodge a bullet begins to cover it, sir. My ex-boyfriend had many crazy moments. I would say one of the most what the frick just happened moments was one morning when we were cuddling. He asked me to give him a blowjob. I asked him if we could maybe kiss a little, if he could maybe finger me, just to warm me up a little. He said forget it, I don't want to do anything to you, I just want a blowjob, don't talk to me anymore. He turned away from me and ignored me for the next half hour. despite my trying to talk to him and apologize. Yes, I found myself apologizing. He turned to me and asked me to leave his house. When I said no, he took out his phone and started to call the cops. So I left. This man was mind games at their worst. I hate how those really crazy ones can do something horrible and at the end you're the one apologizing. She dumped me because I ordered her food and she got weirded out by me knowing what she liked. This was 9 months into the relationship.
The fuck?
Said she loved me before our first date. Had MySpace stalked me for about a year before we met. Had a tattoo of me as a voodoo doll with the date of our first date. Get pissy whenever I mentioned an actress I liked but would get gaga over actors she liked. Threw a tantrum on the Vegas Strip when some girl looked at me and fantasized about me killing her and cooking her body. I feel so sane right now.
Also, why did
When
that
she
do
would
something?
call me drunk at 2 a.m. I should point out she was 15 at the time.
You playing?
I was 16. Pretending to be a different woman trying to seduce me to prove I would cheat on her. I would like to also point out that she was calling my cell phone from her cell phone. It told me who she was before I even answered. I believe that might be evidence that she's retarded. Actually, I was slow to realize she was nutty. She told me she wasn't taking her meds because I was more of her true personality. I didn't even know she was supposed to be on meds, but I wasn't surprised in the least to find out. Went
None
on
of
a
my
camping
Pokemon can
water
take a hit.
skiing trip. She called the night I
Who are
got
you
back
fighting?
before I was even
And-
home, accusing me of messing around with pretty much everyone there. After we broke up, she threatened to come to my house and steal my cat. To be fair, my cat is awesome. A week or so after we broke up, she sent me a text saying she thinks we should get back together. I just sent sorry back. She flew off the handle and went off attacking me, calling me names and accusing me of something else. I wish I could remember the specifics because it was amusing to me, but also sad for her, as if that was going to make
God,
me
stop
want to
hitting your
get
fucking
back
self.
together
What
with
the
her.
fuck?
After we broke up, she threatened to come to my house and steal my cat. That's crossing the
Stupid.
line. Nobody steals Kitty. He sent me anagrams and Korean phrases to translate because I had to prove how much I still loved him after he wanted to break up with me. One night as a joke he closed my mouth and nose for 15 seconds telling me goodbye. It was nice. He slept and ate with leather gloves. Same as OP. He told me to
I'll
hang up.
figure it out,
I did.
guys.
He called me 1 moment later. How could you, and refused to answer me on the phone for hours while he sent me dying notes on my cell phone.
Oh, I should go back
He
and buy
told me
those.
that we will face a World War III caused by China and I had to
Are you
believe him,
serious?
otherwise I would be doomed. When I asked him to tell me what went through his mind, he told me that I could find the answers
fucking
in the black
dumb, yo.
book. I still don't know what it meant. He pretended to have another personality for 2 months. The other personality was a very skilled pianist who was a ghost and came when he had panic attacks. When I started to believe it, he told me that wasn't true because I liked better the other personality. Sorry for my bad English. I have tons of other stories about this, but I can't remember at the moment. If you want to know something else, just tell me. I know it looks like freaking Twilight, but I swear that's the truth. If you hadn't said otherwise, I wouldn't have known English wasn't your first language. We were dating less than a month. When she told me she loved me, I told her I didn't feel the same. That's not the crazy part. She then gave me the ultimatum that I had until the end of the summer to love her. When I did break up with her, she attempted suicide. Her suicide note said she
Thank
was
you.
leaving me the money in her
Fuck
mutual
off.
fund because she wanted me to go to college. That was the sweetest and most insane thing I will ever read. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that end of the summer thing wouldn't have been all the way insane had she parted with you amicably when your time was up in order to find someone as infatuation-wise as she was, rather than attempting to kill herself. When I read the chat logs stating he had been doing CN cheating on me with multiple women the entire time we were living together, and that he was never a student at all while I was under the impression he went to college for mechanics. He was actually just leaving the house in the morning and skateboarding all day. You should probably get an STD test. First ever girlfriend told me that she was abused by her cousin as a child. I took this very seriously, consoled her and asked her if she had ever done anything about this or told her parents. She said yes. He was put to death by electric chair. We live in Ireland. I got sick and went to the doc and found out I was being poisoned by household cleaning agents little bits at a time from my scumbag wife. She is now my crazy ex-wife. She got a real bad case of postpartum. A week after my son was born, my wife started acting very strange. She became really manic depressive. She was also very OCD about cleaning the house. So about a month later, I started getting really sick. I was very fatigued, throwing up, unexplained pain, mental changes, squirts. My doc ran all kinds of tests. He found that my thyroid was acting strange from hormone levels, but other side effects didn't explain it. He checked my other organs. My other test showed signs of poisoning, so they tested for chemicals. They found traces of cleaning chemicals. They were fancy chemical names. I cannot pronounce them. My doctor acted as if I was doing it to myself, so I immediately went home and confronted my wife because I started to put 2 and 2 together. My wife denied, but would say crazy
I'm about to
crap
fight the
to me to
gym.
frick with my head as if she did. I immediately left the house with my son. I wasn't thinking clearly and I didn't collect any evidence to prove it. Because of my government job, my lawyer said the media would eat this crap up, so I decided to just divorce her. He has done a great job so far of keeping her away from me, and whenever she decides to pursue after my son, he does what he has to make her go away. Her family is getting her help. She wasn't really in her right mind while doing this to me. I will probably never trust another woman again the same. This crap scars you for life. I think if I ever saw her, I would probably rage and karate chop her in the neck and rip her nipples off. I'm
The
better
fuck?
now, but I'm left with a hypothyroid and it will have to be removed. I have went from 250 pounds down to 180 pounds. Reminds me of that AMA by that girl whose boyfriend slipped her steroids, except he was trying to make her fat, rather than dead. Argument on the phone until 4 AM about if we ever broke up. Would you
Trying to
date
make her
someone
dead.
else? Well yeah, we'd be broken up in this scenario, with the following several hours filled by her explanation of why she would not, and why my options in life are A, to stay with her forever, or B, to die alone. Epilogue. We broke
Mal,
up
you're
about a year
evolving.
later. She was engaged to someone else before I had another girlfriend. He yelled at me for timing my contractions wrong when I was about to give birth to our daughter. Ahahaha. Sounds like a real butt. No, you're doing IT all wrong. Here, just let me do IT. I had to fake crying to get her to finish me
He
off.
said who?
Classic. Possibly one of the most pathetic things I've ever read.
No, Tempo's only a
Right around
water
that
type.
time he shoved my head into a cinder block wall.
Tempo's a water, just a
I've
water
kissed
type.
a
The rest
lot
of
of
its evolution is just a water
Bachelor
type.
number 1 pulled a knife on me because he had a dream I slept with his
Now it's
friend.
evolving.
Luckily I was more mystified than scared
Exactly.
and simply took it from him and said seriously. Worth noting, his mom once threw a bunch of plates at my head and then offered to buy me a plane ticket to make up for it. The crazy didn't fall far from the truth.
Finally some good fucking
Bachelor number
food.
2 was actually referred to by my friends as Crazy Eric, which should have been my first clue. I could go on about this one. He frequently thought he was the butter. He was pretty sure I was sleeping
You gotta get a
with everyone.
sunstone.
This included a Jewish friend of mine that prompted him to
Where'd you get
send
it
me a
from?
full-on crazy person letter with bizarro anti-Semitic ramblings such as "You'll never be able to get the smell of burning Jew off your body." He thought I was placing ads in the paper to flaunt my other relationships. He gave me a box of dirt as a
Actually,
gift.
Patel
At an art show
knows
he
some
thought
moves
I
that
had
really
fricked
get
one of the
can't.
painters because I looked at his work with him. He cut up his face once to prove something to me and I don't even remember what it was. After I finally broke up with him, he tried to get back together for a long time. He still occasionally sends me emails telling me he forgives me. Bachelor number 3 was actually just kind of clingy and annoying while we were dating. He didn't go for the glory until I broke up with him. We had been living together for a few months, but it had been his place before that, so I went to stay with friends that night and said I'd be back tomorrow to clear out. I left my cats there because, like I said, he didn't seem that crazy. When I came back the next day, he had changed the locks. At first I still didn't get it. It seemed like a reasonable thing to change the locks when your partner moves out. I rang the doorbell, no answer, so I called him. That's when I noticed him peering out the top story window like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He answered the phone and informed me that my cat was locked in a room where he was not going to give it any food or water. So he hoped breaking up with him was worth it because my cat was going to die. I calmly stated that I was calling the police, but that he had better hope they showed up before I finished bashing in the window. because if I got in that way, I was going to take the glass I knocked out of the window and stab him with it. When the police did arrive, he tried to spin it like he was barricaded in because of those threats. The officer actually told him not to be OP and that girls wouldn't threaten to stab him if he didn't steal their cats. Have an upvote. The officer actually told him not to be OP and that girls wouldn't threaten to stab him if he didn't steal their cats. I was freaking my ex via the cowgirl position. She was sorta frog-legged squatting on me. Next thing I know, she plops off my dong, moves up my torso and takes a crap right on my chest. She then scooches her butt cheeks up, down and all around, smearing it all over the place.
What the
I had
fuck?
little time to react. The poop flew out of her in less than a second, like stepping on a tube of toothpaste. I sat in shock, for which seemed like an eternity, but must have been about 5-10 seconds. I literally bucked her off me, bolted to the shower and cleaned off. I contemplated the strange noises she was making while holding her tea and smearing the crap all over my chest. Kinda like a HNNNNG sound, the kind you make when pooping. I decided to end the relationship right then and there, after I dried off of course. When ya gotta go, ya gotta go. If you loved me, you would steal things for me like petty crap from Hot Topic. You just works all the time. At that time I was working a part-time job at a gas station. She got really into drugs and asked me to try a bunch of different drugs with her. When I refused, she called the police and told them I hit her. I didn't leave because the cops would think I tried to flee or some other rationalization I made up at the time. They ended up finally getting in and seeing that she was fine. I said I wanted to leave because I didn't want to be with her anymore, and they said I could go home. The best part was that her dad didn't know she called the police, and he thought they were there to bust him for all his coke in his room. So he gave them a real hard time getting in the house. They got a warrant later and came back and arrested him. I stopped reading at Hot Topic when she mixed up her pill. Dude. My wife's friend's ex was pretty fricked up. We noticed it when he tried to get my wife to deliver his message to her friend on Facebook. She had blocked him, and my wife refused. He then sent a message back where he said that he would, word for word, freaking execute all of your bastard pets. Something about the fact that he berated animals for being conceived out of wedlock made me laugh uncontrollably. When she decided to dump me so she could date a homeless man, her entire family was on my side as they literally watched her throw her life away. This sounds remarkably like my ex-stepmother. When he threw down all his groceries, made a scene, and walked out of the grocery store because he didn't like the way I said no to orange juice with pulp. I knew my ex was crazy way before we started dating, or else I never would have considered it. Sanity is for the weak. You want people who act goofy and somewhat crazy, but deep down hold on to enough rationality not to snap. There are people who believe in magic and pretend to be baby unicorns, and there are people who will cut you while you're sleeping and drink your blood. You want to be close to the line without going over. She admitted to using blackmail, extortion, manipulation, and other dirty tricks to become an admin on a psychology forum. She accused me of using her as a practice relationship. She accused me of not loving her breasts, and that I loved her butt too much, which was complete bulls. I loved all of her, but she hated it when I touched her stomach or breasts. She tried to get me to kill myself, and after we broke up she spread nasty lies about me to her friends, and made up these IM conversations to have me and the person I dated after her breakup. What a wonderful psychology forum that must have been. He held me by the shoulders and said if you ever left me I would kill myself. Broke up with him maybe a month or two later. He's still alive though. I'm making a note here. Huge success. When she manually scooped my depleted spunk into her while crying about how she wanted a baby, we were 17. Well you see son, mommy was crying and trying to shove daddy's sperm inside of her with her pointer fingers, and that's how we got the blessing that you are. I flew my hot little 19-year-old, at the time, self down to Virginia to see him with a suitcase full of lingerie. He ignored me to play WoW all weekend, and when I got upset and cried because my boyfriend who I'd been with for 3 years suddenly didn't seem to care about me at all, he explained that he was going to surprise me with my own WoW account so we could spend more time together. OMG. I think we dated the same guy. Expect I did play with him for a little and he even ignored me in the game. When she suddenly stopped returning my calls and told her roommates not to let me in, without explanation or warning, I passed a message through them to try to meet her in a public place to ask her what was up. She phoned me up and agreed, then called the cops and told them I was threatening to kill her. That was a tip-off. 1. GF decided I'd given her an STD and demanded I go get a chlamydia test, despite having not slept with anyone for many months before her and being completely faithful. For men this means a metal Q-tip down the dong. Her STD turned out to be a yeast infection. 2. GF told me she'd been violated. Insisted on telling me a very elaborate story in which she and a friend of hers were dragged to the basement of City Hall on New Year's Eve and repeatedly assaulted. A year later she tells me, while we were both on LSD, that this had been a lie. She said she felt weird about fricking and decided that the best way to explain this to others was to say she'd been violated. This despite our active and very good private life.
Why are the frames
3.
fucking dropping?
GF thought she heard me say some girl's name in my sleep. Hit me as hard as she could with a pillow. Waking me up, I instinctively backhand her before I realize what I'm doing. She'd hit me really hard and I'd been dead asleep. Yes, I know that's a crappy excuse. And then had me kicked out of her dorm for striking her. Called me an hour later to apologize. 4. A female friend sent me a get well card. GF demanded I call her and tell her off. I refused and said she should call herself and tell my friend it wasn't appropriate. Dumb idea. Because she calls.
All these fucking
looks me in
purple
the eye and
hits.
says frick off you fricking see the fight is caused involved kicks and a thrown glass. 5.
So what?
We broke it off in 1993. In 2009 she contacts me from out of the blue and says she's still got a bunch of the flyers and newspaper columns I did in college, and did I want them back. I googled her email ID and discovered she was a member of some pro-anorexia groups. I asked WTF was up with that, and she flips out, decides I'm a stalker. I say oxxb and she gets even angrier, sending a bunch of emails saying I am a huge liar and phony, etc. Calls me the next day saying I think we got off on the wrong foot. Can we be friends? No. I instinctively backhand her before I realize what I'm doing. She'd hit me really hard and I'd been dead asleep. Yes, I know that's a crappy excuse. Actually, that's one of the very few valid excuses, given that it's a primal instinct to beat an attacker if hit while sleeping. There was nothing you could do about it. Long time ago, married a lovely, smart, reasonable woman. After a few years I realized that every holiday, long weekend, drop of a hat we ended up at her parents' house. We never had time as just us. I arranged a long weekend on Labor Day, 3 nights, reservations, fun stuff to do.
I'm gonna be stupid.
She
I'm
said
gonna
I
be
was
stupid.
so romantic 2 days before the event her mother calls. Not a big deal. Her mom often called.
Like
She gets
Patel
on the
didn't
phone
have
with
any
mom. Tells
love
mom
today.
we are going away for the long weekend. Just the two of
Please
us.
don't.
I could hear mom screaming through the telephone all the way across the room. Wife was crying, begging to be allowed time with my husband. Mom does not relent. Wife says that we have to go to mom's. And we did. Forfeiting reservation
Oh, you have
deposits.
aerial.
Much
Fuck that.
discussion, negotiating, therapy after the
Fuck
long weekend.
that.
She owns up that she cannot disobey her mother.
I'm about to
My
beat the
employer
gym.
offers me a promotion, big raise, but I have transfer all the way across the country. When I tell her to pack, she says no. There is no negotiation, no discussion, just no. I take the job and move. We divorced. The only
So am
saving
I.
grace is that we had no kids. Jesus, I'm sorry, dude. This takes me a few years back. I had to buy a pregnancy test for her before we had fricked, and she was a virgin. She wouldn't eat any food that she hadn't bought and literally held in her possession because she was afraid that someone would poison her, including her entire family and myself. But I think the end all was when I turned 17 and got my license. She cried and ran away from home because she said that I was going to use it to pick up women and frick them in my car. Yeah, it was an interesting time.
My God, stop healing, you stupid
I had
bitch.
2 crazy EXS that hated each other. They would constantly compete for my attention.
It keeps
One night,
healing.
at
Oh my
local watering
God.
hole singing karaoke with my buddies. Both crazies walk in. They started talking to each other in the corner like they were best friends. The next thing I know, the two of them are singing a duet together. What sing might
Thank
you ask?
you.
Brandy and
Thank
Monica, the boy's
you.
mine. Bonus. One of these girls was a cutter who
She's
would
so
punch mirrors
annoying.
and cut the insides of her thighs with the glass shards. Extra bonus. The other girl, while riding on top of me during fricking, proceeded to start crying and tell me how much she loved me. Oddly, she never got out of rhythm. There's no shame in crimexing. On the phone with my then girlfriend. Her. So what books do you like? Me. Oh, well right now I'm liking the Harry Potter series. Her. The book is full of witchcraft. That involves the devil. J.K. Rowling is Satan. Thankfully it didn't get too serious before I found this out. Next book on my reading list is the Necronomicon. After 5 months of dating, my ex-boyfriend was talking about getting married and having kids. He said he wanted 5 or more. Mind you, we were still in high school. I noped the frick out of that relationship. Her friend was going down on me. At her suggestion, she grabs the back of the girl's head and forces her down until she gags and comes up coughing. Her friend looks a bit confused and is trying to breath, and my ex slaps her across the face and goes, "That's not how you please daddy." Broke up with one guy after he got particularly clingy, and as a means to win me back wrote a pretty extreme and long love letter, "I'll die without you etc." in his own blood on a large piece of white fabric. 1. Said I love you after 2 weeks of knowing each other, not dating, just knowing each other. I said no you don't. 2. Said anyone who believes in evolution is an idiot. 3. Got really drunk, fell through a glass table, then ate chicken parmesan entirely with his hands, no plate, nothing, in bed. I have so many more. So many, but these are some highlights of the relationship. Forks and plates are not necessary when that drunk. She didn't like The Fifth Element. After we broke up with the icing on the cake, she walked into a party stone sober. Within a half hour she had finished a bottle and pee on a chair. Wait, I mean, she used a chair in the living room, where everyone was partying, as a toilet. I mean, she literally pulled her pants down and pee an entire pee on this chair she thought was a toilet. That's one classy dame. Thinking back on it, I have no idea how I stayed with him after even one of these. He cheated on me while I was pregnant with 2 different girls. His ex showed up at our house and told me that she had lost 100 pounds because of his mind games. He stole 10k from his own mother. He stole my ATM card in the middle of the night and would go buy a bunch of booze to sell to college kids to get money for coke. He spent our rent money on coke. Anytime I made a friend he would find a way to sabotage it. I got fired from several jobs because he would show up while I was working and act psycho. Every time I tried to leave he would threaten to kill himself, take my car keys, not let me leave the house, punch me in the face. He got fired from a really good job for stealing from his work. I tried to kill myself and he lay down in bed with me and didn't even notice all the blood. Yes, I have left him now and have a restraining order, but crap. Should have done it so much sooner. I don't see how spending money on soda is a problem. You have been visited by the IT lizard. Upvote or experience bad internet for a month. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person. What's the most random or freaked up thing you've seen on the job? Possibly NSW. I've worked at a few theme parks doing shows.
You beat her yet?
Everything from your typical parade to more exciting things like sea lion shows and stunt extravaganzas. So my friend was playing the Riddler in a Batman water stunt show at Six Flags. In the front row there was a mentally handicapped adult with his mother who was really into the show. You couldn't ask for a better audience member. He cheered for
Next
Batman,
cutscene.
hooted and awed at the explosions and booed the Riddler and his goons.
Find Bianca.
At the end of the show, as with most theme park attractions, it is customary
You know where
to
to
do
go?
a meet and greet where the cast members shake hands with the public. The kid was just thrilled to meet Batman, who was at the front of the line of characters to meet. He took a few pictures and moved down the line. My friend the Riddler was at the end of the queue by the exit. The beefy beast of a kid takes one look at the Riddler and shouts in all his speech-impeded glory, "You leave Batman alone," and proceeds to lay a mind-blowing haymaker on my buddy, who I knocked out cold and falls into the pool. He is rescued and fine. The mother was super apologetic.
That spelling's
but my
already
friend
perfect,
simply
leave it
said
alone.
with the class of a true gent, "Hey, as an actor I know I did my job and I appreciate the feedback. TLDR. Mentally challenged kid knocks out my buddy in defense of Batman as he portrayed the Riddler at a theme park." That'll teach your friend for messing with the Batman. I worked for a mortgage servicing company. We were going to foreclose on a house wherein the homeowner had gone through all the hoops, missed phone calls, lost paperwork, and such, and actually been approved for a modification. She sent in her first payment for the modification on time, but since the paperwork hadn't been finished yet, the person flagged the payment as too early, sent the check back, and started the ball rolling on a foreclosure. We even had notes on the account indicating when the check came in, that someone asked their manager about it. The manager said it was too early, and they sent it back. Meanwhile, the homeowner thinks everything is fine because they were approved and sent in their payment when they were directed to. I tried to get 3 different managers to look at the account and take notice that we were about to frick up, but seriously, they all blew me off and said let the process take its course. I copied down the lady's phone number and called her from a blocked cell phone that evening after work and told her that due to a paperwork snafu the company was going to try to take her house, and that she needed to call in the morning and chew butt to get it straightened out. She did. I don't regret that. I know I violated a bunch of both company rules and FDCPA rules as well as customer confidentiality, and I don't care. I would do it again. Thank you so much for this. I lost my childhood home in a foreclosure and it was really traumatic, and I just remember my mom coming home really upset because nobody was working with her. The fact that someone would try to alleviate this for anyone is really great. I work at a copy and print shop, and let me just say that I could fill pages with some of crap that people have asked me to print. This one, however, is my least favorite. Guy comes up to my counter one day and right away I can tell this is going to be unpleasant. He's mid-40s, dressed like a hipster, slicked back hair, sporting a fanny pack and wearing the glassy-eyed expression of a friendly neighborhood diddler. He hands me a CD and asks me to print 2 of the files in booklet form. In my heart there isn't only love and Penis the Menace. Printed out the first one and, oh great, the man is an artist. The book is full of poorly done photoshops and amateur philosophical musings. Whatever, I've seen crap like this before. When he asks I tell him it's very well done and the people at his club are sure to love it. Then I print the second file. Perhaps the name should have acted as some kind of warning. But when I grab it from the printer, it's just pages and pages of dongs. One dong actually. One dong dressed in dozens of different costumes, sporting googly eyes and photoshopped in front of major landmarks and nature scenery. At this point I am forced to accept one of 2 equally unfortunate truths. He has either dressed his own dong in all these outfits and taken the pictures that way, or he has somehow coerced another man into affixing his junk with googly eyes and dong dresses. TLDR. Lots of dongs donning googly eyes and costumes. Working in McDonald's. Kid comes to counter saying she wanted to use the disabled toilet but door was locked and a man was lying down. Went to look. Found a junkie out cold, blood everywhere, needle still in his arm and he wasn't breathing. Had to put him in the recovery position and hold his airway open for 15 minutes. Vile. Maybe he was just too excited that the McRib was back. I worked a summer job at Petco my freshman year in high school. I walked into work one day to hear my store's manager yelling my name.
Oh, what the fuck?
Obviously confused, I walk into the back room, where, to my dismay I see that all of the
Missing for
kennels
no
that hold the
reason.
kittens in the store are wide open. Right about now is where I panic. I look around the back room, not having seen a single kitten yet. This thought terrifies me because those little things are worth a lot of money. Finally I get into the storage room, and open the door to see the most random thing I've ever encountered in my life. 40 kittens running around a 20-foot by 20-foot room, with my store manager sprawled across the floor yelling Tyler help me. I messed up. WTF worthy yet not disgusting. Oh god kittens. Wasn't on my job but a friend of mine worked a night shift at a grocery during weekdays and strongly suggested I come visit him on a Wednesday night, around 3 AM. I found that weird. What an awkwardly precise timing. But being a night owl and a student, I very often happened to be awake at the time. So I decided to pay him a visit once. I got there around 2:45. We started chatting about random things and I ended up asking so, what is it you wanted to show me? He told me to wait a few minutes. So we went back to chatting and when the doorbell rang he simply whispered look. 2 average looking guys, probably in their early 30s, had showed up. They were clearly on acid or something from the look on their face. As soon as they entered the store, one slowly climbed inside a shopping cart and sat inside. The other one took the cart and started slowly pushing it forward. They followed the aisles, having a good, hard look at all the colorful and wonderful products on the shelves. Once they had come back to their starting point, the guy inside the cart stood up, climbed down from the cart, and they switched places. They started their circuit once again, visiting every aisle, but in the final aisle, they stopped in front of a freezer and got a deep delicious cake from it. The guy pushed the cart to the register, paid for the cake. The guy inside the cart stood up and then climbed down from it, and just like that, they left. I was speechless. The whole scene took 10 to 15 minutes. My friend told me the same two guys did the exact same thing every Wednesday night at 3 AM, give or take 5 minutes. He had asked his boss about this, but seeing as they never bothered customers and actually bought their cake every time, he didn't mind. I found this oddly beautiful. Not me, but at a gas station down the road last week, a woman paid for $5 in gas, left her ID on the counter saying she won't be needing it anymore, then went to the pump, soaked herself in gasoline, and lit herself on fire. 3 people rushed to her with extinguishers, but she still died on the way to the hospital. One person was the clerk, the other 2 were electricians on their lunch break. Working in a bank and watching elderly people lose their life savings in a heartbeat. Multiple occasions. One was about a year ago. Typical Nigerian scam. This one was particularly bad because the scammers went all in right away. Didn't even try to frick them out of a few grand with a fake certified check. 85-year-old couple lost their entire savings, just shy of $100,000, and had no way of getting it back. They were convinced to keep their winnings a secret and refused to give the branch manager any details. In my opinion, he should have done more, but moot point. The worst is watching elderly people get cleaned out by their own children. Watching them set up joint accounts and durable power of attorney papers with their kids, who then rob them blind and move to a different state. The first one is a rare case, usually because someone notices a suspicious check or stops a wire transfer. The second happens all the time and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Once they're joined on an account or a POA, they can use whatever's there. That is so unbelievably sad. I was on work experience with a pest control company. Thanks uncle. And we get to the house of this old lady. It was immaculate, everything was completely dust free. We ask what the problem is and it's a colony, nest of cockroaches in her garden drain. She says she found it a month ago and tried to get rid of them all by pouring bleach down the kitchen sink 3 times a day for a month. We open the drain in the garden and we see maybe 2-3 dozen cockroaches that have been bleached to the color of bone. All perfectly healthy apart from color. Everyone knows you can't kill roaches with, well, most things. I work for the railroad. One night we were stopped in a siding waiting for an Amtrak to pass. With the train about 500 featuring from us doing 80 miles per hour, some guy decided to check out and stepped in front of the train. He disappeared in a pink cloud of smoke. What was left looked like someone spilled a red slushy. I also clipped a drunk driver who had gotten his car stuck on the rails and decided to run off
Oh my
before we hit
god.
him. Hit him doing maybe 30. He bounced off the ground but got up and ran. Saw a drunk guy being loaded in an ambulance after deciding to run from the railroad police. He didn't make it far and tripped and fell under a train while crossing through it. The train ran over him and he lost both legs and one arm. Lucky to be alive. He was in his early 20s. And lastly, found a dead homeless guy on a rail car completely frozen in place. Poor guy picked a bad freight car to ride. Worked at a summer day camp years ago. We used to wait outside of the locker room while the groups got changed for pool time, etc. One day all the kids have come back out for swim and are laughing their asses off. Not that unusual, so not thinking much of it, we do a quick head count to make sure we are ready to go and realize that we are 1 kid short. Wait another minute and he's still not coming back
so
out.
dumb.
So I went in to check it out. A wave of crap smelling like low tide at a sewage plant nails me as soon as I hit the door. Not knowing what to expect now with this smell in the air, I walked to the back of the locker room to find the straggler arm deep in his own crap drawing what looked like the Mothman prophecies of poo on the wall. Turned around and walked out. Moved from the counselors to dishwashing that day and never looked back. I used to work at a movie theater, and this one incident sticks out like a horrible, crappy thumb. It was a relatively slow day, so my co-workers and I are lounging about in the lobby when an older gentleman, dressed all in white shorts, shirt, socks, sneakers. This is an important detail. Hurries into the bathroom. We all think nothing of it because we've seen people rush in before, probably so they don't miss their movie. A little bit of time progresses and we forget all about him, until a middle-aged black guy walks in, and in the smoothest voice I've ever heard asks me this: "Hey my man, mind if I use the bathroom?" I respond with "Absolutely sir, go right ahead." No less than 10 seconds later he comes out, and what he told me next will be forever burned into my brain. "Yo my man, someone didn't quite make it." He then just strolled out of the theater. No man could have prepared me for what I saw. It was a crap explosion. The stench hit me so hard I actually started screaming, and I got louder as I noticed the amount of crap all over the place. I called my co-workers over to witness the aftermath of the shitstorm, and they too became loud and shocked at what has transpired. At one point, while we were all preparing to assault the shitness with cleaning supplies, the perpetrator tried to sneak out of the theater, Solid Snake style, which was next to impossible because the bathroom was directly opposite the exit. The man's previously pristine, white clothing had turned crap yellow-brown, with it trickling down his legs, staining his white tube socks and sneakers the same vile color. As the cleanliness offensive against the Tiroshits progressed, we finally opened the stall where the main attack happened. It was like this guy's butt didn't want to live anymore and blew its butt brain out. It covered the walls, the toilet, and the floor in the putrid stank. To top it all off, he left his freaking crap soiled tighty whities draped over the toilet bowl. That day freaking sucked. TLDR. Older gentler dude commits butt suicide in the men's room at my old movie theater job, and the smoothest black man ever was the harbinger of bad news. More like Liquid Snake style. I used to work for a town pool in an urban area. Every day for about 2 weeks there would be poop in front of the gate where we opened. Human poop. Every day. Turns out one of the
I'm watching
kids
Reddit
advertised on the pool
videos.
would sneak out of his house every night and poop
These
in
are like
front of
Reddit
it in anger.
stories.
Angry poop is the worst poop. I worked in an inner city major hospital as an ED nurse for 12
I'm
years.
sorry.
I have so many stories I don't even know where to start. The accidents, illnesses, things people couldn't control should not be talked about. But the others, insanity. For a period of time in Houston there was a trend among certain members of an extreme segment of the gay community to have mummification parties. A man comes into the ED in a homemade body cast, head to toe, with openings for his nose, mouth, anus and genitals. The idea, I was told, was to force ejaculation through the use of a cattle prod, rectally, and to use the other openings as the participants wished, while the mummy was helpless to resist. This one group decided to use direct 220 V current from a dryer outlet, placing a metal rod into his rectum, and a clamp on his scrotum. The man had expelled all fluids he had to expel, and had essentially cooked in the body cast. His eyeballs had exploded. I was never sure why he was even brought in by EMS, because he was obviously dead, but I got the initial job of cutting the cast off. The smell of burnt flesh was something that was intense enough to make me retch. Describing the state of the body is probably not even required. Just think of a human hot dog, cooked far too long, and left to die in a plaster cast. His abdomen, unable to expand in the cast, had split and cooked feces and viscera had saturated the cast. Once the autopsy was done, it was found he had dozens of broken bones. This was perhaps one of the most horrific deaths I had ever seen. I'm sure someone will say I am bashing gays here.
Facts.
I'm bashing human stupidity and the fact that a human life was utterly
There's like an
wasted.
hour of these
I think we had
stories.
our winner. Holy frick.
I personally find them entertaining, but some of them could be like really weird.
A friend of a friend referred a guy to me that was a local music producer or something.
As you can tell.
Said his computer is down, and he needs it back up ASAP. It just shut off one day. We agree on a price plus parts and he leaves. Now this computer was a nice custom built job in a nice case. The outside looked a little stained up, and it smelled of nicotine and something a bit sweeter. I figured weed, but it was fairly clean on the outside. I take the side off the computer. I am trying to figure
Thank you
out
for the
what
follow,
I am
Coffee
looking
Me
at,
Too. I really
because
appreciate
it looked like a mixture of small rubber bands and gel.
And thank you for coming
I
to the
can't
stream.
even see the processor fan. The pile is so high. Took me a minute to figure out what it was. It was a moldy stinking pile of used rubbers. The guy had been hiding them in his computer. I had no idea why. I call the guy and tell him I refuse to touch it. He tells me he will come clean it up and for me to include a new case in the bill. All he wanted was his recording hardware out of it. Oh, and he offered me a lot of money to not tell anyone. So he comes over and does the deed, and I tackle removing the parts he wanted out of it. Ended up building him a completely new computer minus the sound card interface and the drives. When the guy picked up the new computer he hands me $1,200, $700-ish in parts, and told me to keep my mouth shut. His wife did not need to find out. Freaking gross. TLDR. Guy had a 1.5 foot tall pile of used rubbers in his computer. This happened almost 10 years ago. I was working the night shift at a very popular coffee shop in a busy tourist location during the summer. At about 2 AM, this guy came in dressed as a bee, and it wasn't a nice bee costume. It was a garbage bag painted with yellow stripes with a really bad looking bug mask. While hunched over and buzzing, he ordered a cup of sugar water. Suspicious. I gave him his water and he drank it through his straw mouth thing. Since water was free, I said he didn't have to pay. He suddenly straightened up and in a deep, normal voice said,
The fuck,
"Thanks
sugar
for being
water?
cool about this." Gave me a
Must be
$5
trying to be
tip
a
and
bee.
walked out. I still don't know what the frick was going on. I half expected to see two guys
Or
in
some
black
alien or
suits
some
come
shit.
to neuralize me after that. Since people want to know, Zbluski did not guess correctly, but he had a really good guess. Sounds like he lost a bet with his friends. I worked in a factory making parts for a major car company. Actually, the company I worked for was contracted by a major company.
He clearly
Anyways,
identifies
one
as a
day,
bee.
a guy got
His
hand
pronouns are
stuck in a
bee
machine
and-
that pushed tiny stoppers into the part that would stop fluid and whatnot. There was roughly 10,000 pounds of pressure pinning his hand in place. The place was so poorly ran that nobody knew how to get it open, and they had to call a guy to come open it. He was stuck in there so long, they had to get him a chair to sit down while he waited. Miraculously, his hand is fine now. I saw someone lose their arm up to their elbow in a printing press. Crappy thing is that the day before the accident I was training him and telling him that if he ever dropped a rag during cleanup to just let it go and not try and
Well,
be a
thanks for
hero.
telling me.
Needless to say, he reacted and tried to grab a rag he dropped. This was his first week on the job. The worst thing I've ever seen is a child shaming case in which the father boiled water and held his child by the ankles and dunked his head in
Or
the
do you
nose,
prefer
boiling
like both
away
of them,
his
or
skin.
like
He is the
is there a
only
certain one you
person I probably
prefer over
would
the
have
other?
killed if I met him at the moment I was treating his son. I have never felt such anger and disgust and horror all in one moment as I did that day. I hope I never have to again, but of course will happily do so anytime I'm needed. Born raised on a ranch. I have quite a few. I had a cow that was having troubles calving, so I chased her in to pull the calf. The calf came out and was inside out. I work in
Oh,
a
okay,
clothing
cool,
store.
cool.
A very lazy lady who asked to use the toilet could
All is
be
welcome
bothered to
into my
walk 2
stream.
minutes to the nearest toilets as we have none in store. Instead, she went to the fitting rooms, took in some clothes, proceeded to defecate on the floor and pee in a plastic bag. She then walked out smiling and left the store. Several minutes later a lady came out complaining about the smell for
A
us to
rotation
find this
battle?
ugly
Fuck
gift
outta
on the
here.
floor. Cleaners refused to clean it up, so a supervisor had to do it instead.
I won't do no damn rotation
Definitely
battle.
not worth the extra £1 an hour.
Mel,
I
where you
didn't
at in the
work
game?
in Primark. For those unfamiliar with the store, let's call it
Oh, the
the
trainers.
Walmart of British shops. Where I work, if that happens, we get £50 an hour next paycheck.
Oh wait, are you
no
doing that
questions
that
asked.
double battle?
The only other person who has to know who
Already
cleaned
passed
it is
that.
the duty manager. Back when I was lifeguarding, a parent brought his severely mentally handicapped teenage.
So, are you
the
getting
kids,
Joltik or
onto the
not?
pool during the most
I keep
crowded
forgetting.
hours. The kid goes around swimming, walking
Fuck.
around the pool, doing his typical pool things for a while. I stop paying attention to him. Later, I'm on the stand when suddenly I see the kid's dad from across the pool stand up and yell the kid's name at the top of his lungs. I look behind me to where he was looking to be met with the sight of the kid straight up dropping his bathing suit, bending over, and dropping a massive crap right on the pavement.
He's throwing
near
that
the
ass
pool
back.
at peak hours, in front of everyone. The dad quickly gets his kid under control, apologizes to all of us working, and leaves with the kid. Luckily I was on the stand and the other lifeguard had to clean it up. I convert old 16mm films to DV tapes, and while working with the film, the overhead lights have to be off in the room. I work with a very dim, red light. This room contains 2 computers and has a giant cabinet in the middle of the room that separates where I work from everybody else. When
Oh,
I work
this
in this room,
the title of this
which is
video
not
is
often,
like,
my boss
what's the
wants me to lock
most
the door and put a
fucked
do
up
not
thing
come
you've
sign
seen
on
at
the
work.
office door. I
So I'm
always
assuming
put the
like
sign on the door, but rarely lock it.
there's a lot of
Since I
stories
feel
of
like
people
it looks
taking shits,
incredibly sketchy to be
like
alone in a very
stores
dark
and shit.
room with computers. Well, one day when I was assigned to the room around lunchtime, I hear someone open the door, and I was expecting my boss to come talk to me about some random crap. After a few minutes of nothing happening, I figured the person must have opened the door, realized that they were not supposed to be in there, and left. Well, that wasn't the case. After a few moments, I started to hear this awkward breathing that
Ooh, I
sounded
need
like a
skull. I
laugh.
actually
I thought that one of the idiot student workers were farting around on the computers. Since I am not the most controversial guy, I rolled my chair back from my workstation to see who was in the room and tried to passive-aggressively hint that they needed to get out of there. As I was rolling my chair back, I realized that the 2 computers in the room were still off, but I still heard a female voice heavily breathing. I then felt extremely awkward and had no idea what to do. I was about 95% sure that a girl was masturbating, so I decided to head back to my desk, put the film I was working on in a safe place, and turn the light on. There was a light switch by my workstation. When I turned the light on, the girl nervously said, "Oh my god," zipped her pants, and left the room. I never saw who it was. I only heard the zipper, but I always wonder which girl was so frisky at work that she had to masturbate during lunch. TLDR. I caught a female co-worker masturbating at work. If everyone knows you work back there, just start giving
That's
people
hot as
mad
hell.
looks. The one that turns beet red is the masturbator. Suru, I used to work in people's homes remodeling. One day when I was at the shop, a guy I worked with named Dave came back from doing a tear out
I know
on
this
a
is gonna be
kitchen.
risky, but I'm
Now,
gonna risk
Dave
it
was
all.
normally a very talkative guy, but today he was very silent. Myself, Dave and 2 other guys were outside by the dumpster and someone finally asked Dave if he was okay. He said he was fine and continued to throw stuff away. Finally Dave turned to us and said, "I can't go back to that job tomorrow. Someone else will have to go finish up." The shop manager who was out there with us throwing stuff away told him that was fine, but we had to know why before we could just swap jobs. Dave proceeded to tell us this story. He went to this job, but before he could start working in the kitchen there was a
I'm about to
terrible
end the
smell
stream in
coming
like
from
7
the
minutes.
sink. He didn't want to be rude, so he tried to cover the smell up without having to embarrass the old lady who lives there. He continues to work but eventually
It's
can't
like
take it anymore.
almost
He
4
figured
a.m.
He knows what will work, so he takes a rag,
I
soaks
want to
it
play a
in
little bit
lacquer
more
thinner and shoves it
Pokemon
down the sink
Black.
hole.
I
It
went to
doesn't
bed.
cover the smell. I mean lacquer thinner, this crap literally peels paint off walls and it won't cover the smell.
Actually,
Dave can no longer take the smell and also figures that this is a plumbing health hazard and needs to tell the homeowner. He proceeds to talk to the old lady, telling her that she has a terrible smell in her kitchen sink and that a plumber needs to come take a look at it before he can continue working. She looks him square in the eye and says, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with the plumbing. I pour my husband's colostomy bags down the garbage disposal, so there's no need to worry." He finishes the tear out as fast as he can and leaves. The next day our boss sends another employee to the site. He works half a day and leaves. The next day the same thing happens. On Thursday I finally get sent to the site and it really was the most horrific smell I have ever had the pleasure of smelling. I worked a half day and left. Our shop manager finally went on Friday and finished the job. The lady loved the work and sent us all a card thanking her for the beautiful kitchen. Because frick toilets. Working Tesco on early evening shift, 6 till 10 p.m. Around 9:15 or so, I'm filling up the fridge of sandwiches by the main entrance. Notice huge, mean-looking dog walk in. Ignored it. Big bald guy holding stick follows. Makes sense. Guy was playing with his dog. I figured. Finish the sandwiches. Heading back through the shop floor to get on with my job. Notice trail of blood. It goes up and down the aisles. All over the store. These are big drops of blood. Real horror movie type blood trail. I walk past the store's bakery. It goes in there as well. Next aisle up. I walk past the guy with his dog. Face is fricked up. One eye. Bloody mess. He asks me if I've seen
frame.
2 chaps. I say no. He leaves. Other staff are desperately trying to clean up the blood trail that we now know he left. especially the parts in the bakery. We make food there. Dude, or rather, we cook the pre-packaged frozen dough we get sent. Talking to coworkers just after. Turns
God,
out
why
two
the frames
kids
actually?
beat the crap out of him, taking one of his eyes. He was looking for them and planning to.
I'm in
assume,
the cold
beat the living
storage.
crap out of them. Anyway, few months later, a drunk was
The cold
refused to use in the
storage.
same store, so drove his car through the window and took out an empty cash register. I work on film sets as a production coordinator, but last summer I was working as an assistant on a feature film that was shooting on a rooftop in Manhattan. The rooftop we were shooting on was located on the same block as a popular college, and one of the main dorm buildings happened to stand right across from our set. Anyway, on one of the first days of shooting, we noticed that many students were moving into these dorms. It was August, so the fall semester was almost starting. Just as the sun was going down and we were about to get our first shot off on the camera, another PA broke out in hysterical laughter. He pointed across the street to the dorms where, right in perfect view inside one
I'll
of the
save it
dorm
in.
windows, a freshman couple were going
My
at it
God, why are the
dorky
frames
style.
acting so dumb?
The whole set turned and saw them, laughing and cheering them on. The guy noticed we were watching and waved at us with a huge crap-eating grin, which caused us to cheer even louder. The girl finally looked back and saw him smiling, then turned to see the entire film crew watching them bang from one rooftop over. She dove away from the window, and then the blinds closed. TLDR. Film crew caught a freshman couple banging in their dorm, cheered them on. I used to work in an office building in downtown Chicago. Directly across the street from us was housing for one of the art schools. Some of the residents took a great amount of pleasure from walking around naked or fricking while in plain view. One was a suicide girl, another oiled up her body and did a photo shoot while pressing herself against the window. Needless to say, morale went up. I have tons of stories from my years as an insulator, but
The
one
guy that
that
did
I
so
have
much. What the
been
fuck?
thinking about lately was this finished attic we had to go into to insulate the slants. The problem was, there was a renter up there in this little one-bedroom, third-floor apartment with a kitchenette, bathroom and tiny living room. The landlord had to fight to get us in there, and when we finally did, we discovered, after 2 weeks of working on the rest of the house, that there was a giant black woman living on a lazy boy recliner up there. She had never once come out of the house, and, it seemed, she was either too fat to get out or agoraphobic. Maybe both. She was up there with several large dogs that I saw were let out by a man 2 times during the day. While I was there, he came by, let them out for a few minutes to do their business and let them back in. The apartment was brimming with trash, junk and smell. Horrible smell. It smelled like unwashed human, crap, rotten dog. There was no ventilation, and the woman, who had nothing but a mega-sized t-shirt on, or so it seemed, did not want the lights on. The dogs followed me around the place, dimly lit by whatever sun slipped through the drawn shades, as I worked in the sweltering summer heat, pushing stuff out of the way, boring holes in the sheetrock and blowing in cellulose insulation. It's very dusty work and I covered what I could, but there was so much junk. Seriously, it was like something you see on TV. The woman did not want to leave during the work and did not want a face mask. She just sat there, stinking, watching a tiny little TV and eating. She didn't talk much. She just yelled at the dogs a lot. I imagine she was around 500 pounds. What I could not figure out is where she went to the bathroom, because she never got up from her seat. Then again, the smell was terrible. The man that came by to let the dogs out would refill her food and soda supply, mostly junk food that came in bags or boxes. This was like 8 years ago. I can't imagine she's still alive. TLDR. Saw a giant, agoraphobic pack rat living in her own filth. It smelled bad. Worked in tech support. Guy brought in his PC. There was CP on the desktop, in different folders. Called the cops. They came and got the computer. Never heard from them or the customer. I am a vet tech and I used to work at a humane society.
Oh
We
my
had a dog
God,
Colin that was
yo.
confiscated
Can't
for
take
being
a
abused
hit.
and had a horrible genital infection. The dog was spayed, so it wasn't pyometra. Uterine infection dogs get if not spayed. And we didn't have x-ray, so we weren't 100% sure what was wrong with it. I took it to the emergency clinic to get it x-rayed and just about passed out when I saw the film. The crap bag owners had shoved a syllab up into the dog's tea and just freaking left it there. We don't know how long it had been there, but it took surgery and a lot of antibiotics to fix it. And wouldn't you know, this was the absolute nicest dog ever. I want to kill people that abuse their animals. The dog survived and she was adopted out to a really nice family. Crap bag owners just got slapped with a huge fine as far as I know. This was just after the Japanese earthquake tsunami. Outside the front of the shop where I work, there was this Japanese family collecting money for the tsunami appeal. There were a few generations there, so young kids and older people as well. Around lunchtime I noticed a drunken, what looked like homeless man sitting on a wall watching them and drinking cheap cider. After a while of seeing this family getting money from the customers, I can only assume that this man got a bit jealous and walked over to the family who were collecting and started shouting at the lady leading the collection. Passers-by started to notice and a bit of a crowd formed with people trying to stop this man screaming at the Japanese folk who were collecting. I'm not exactly sure what he was saying at this point, but at one point he decided to give them a tsunami of their own and whipped his dog out and started pee over them and their small stall. Kids' parents and table as well as himself all got covered. Needless to say, he was arrested and hasn't been seen since. I worked as a car salesman. It was late on a Saturday night. I was out front of the dealership with my customers and this bum walks up with a bag in his hand. He shows it to my customer's wife and she asked what it was. The husband and I were a few feet away and I could see the husband was agitated that this bum was talking to his wife. So he told the bum, "Get the frick out of here before I call the cops." The bum says, "Calm. We need them here right now. Look what I found."